Okay, so I know I haven't actually uploaded here in like 3-ish years, I think. But listen, we got a trailer for a new Xenoblade game today. Um, I have never done a trailer reaction before. I have not watched any trailer reactions for this, but I wanted to like. This isn't like a raw reaction. This is an analysis. I have never done a trailer analysis before, which is both statements are true. But I just wanted to like go through and look at what's going on here because I have thoughts. They are bubbling up in my brain, and I want to get them out somewhere. So I'm making that your problem now. Have fun. I have not looked at like any other analyses of this. This is just my like raw unfiltered feeling on what we might expect out of this game. Um, let's find out. So we've got it's on the Switch 2. Wow, what a surprise. Um just to start out, like it almost goes without saying at this point, but this is a beautiful video game. Xenoblade games are always beautiful. I love how all of them look. This one certainly looks like it's going to be no exception. There is some new art style that we see a little bit later that is interesting. I don't know fully how I feel about that yet, but I am definitely open to it. Anima was the source of all things. I'm gonna try to be jumping between the narration and the visuals here. I don't know how successful I will be at that. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out together. Anima was the source of all things. So here's the first like big surprising shot of the trailer, right? Because the world is rising up in the background. Now, at first, I thought this was some sort of like, like in some like stage plays or like older movies. Think The Wizard of Oz. They'll have like the backgrounds painted onto like the back panel of the set. Um, I almost at first thought this was kind of emulating that because we've got an almost painterly look that you can see up in the top left here. That'll become very obvious in a few other shots of this trailer. Having seen the rest of this trailer, I don't think that's actually the case. We seem to be on some sort of like ring world or some sort of inverted spheroid world. Which is fascinating. Like, Xenoblade 1 and 2, obviously, one of the most, like, unique and immediately striking things about those games is just how unique the setting was. I feel that we lost that a little bit in Xenoblade 3. I think that was one of my bigger problems with the game was that the world just didn't feel quite as unique in 3 as it did in 1 and 2. So this shot, like, having seen this now, I'm confident that we're getting back to this in Genesis. By the way, I meant to say this at the start, but I forgot. I don't know if it is fair to call this game Xenoblade 4, because we don't really know what it is yet. It's definitely not titled Xenoblade 4, but in my head, I have found myself occasionally referring it to Xenoblade 4. So if I call it Xenoblade 4 on accident through the course of this, yeah, that's on me. I'm talking about Xenoblade Genesis. If I say Xenoblade 4, assume I'm talking about Xenoblade Genesis. There's not like some secret other game that you missed. And I'm not calling X 4 also. Why would I call X 4? It's clearly not Xenoblade 4. Anyway, looks like we're on, I'm going to assume an inverted sphere because we don't see like outwards into space at all, as far as I'm aware. I'm going to assume inverted sphere. That's what we're dealing with. Water, fire, wind. Not earth. We got the 3 of the other the 4 classical elements. I'm assuming we're just kind of glossing over that. You got the point after the first 3. Every force that gave shape to this world, like Earth, for instance, I guess. Also, lovely town. This like, I don't know, something about this gives me like vibes of almost the seaside town in near Replicant, somehow combined with like the main city in Atelier Ryza. I don't know why I feel like that, but like that's the vibe that this town setting is kind of giving me.
構成するその全ては
We got another lovely waterfalls. Xenoblade does love its lovely waterfalls.
大地を流れるアニマ
Was a manifestation of the anima that flows through this land. This looks like a visual glitch that I'm having here. I did download the trailer off YouTube, so I'm looking at this in a VLC Media Player. Shout out to VLC Media Player, great media player. Anyway, there that looked like a visual glitch there. I'm gonna try to distinguish visual glitches from actual stuff that's going on in the trailer, but I will note here we've got like some hints of green around this fire that's kind of reminiscent of that camp scene in Gorma in Xenoblade 2, if you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if that's just a visual touch or if that's going to be more involved with the story like it was in Xenoblade 2. We're going to find out, I guess, when we play the actual
を
game.
流れるアニマが形を変えたもの
Also, I have no idea if this is important. Oh, we do see into space. Okay, when I said we don't see into space, I just completely forgot how this shot looks. So maybe this is a ring world. I don't know yet. We're presumably going to find out in future trailers, and obviously we're going to find out in the actual game what the heck is going on with this world. However, what I wanted to mention... What did I want to mention? Oh yeah, I have no idea if this is actually important or not, but it just struck me a little bit weird that this whole narration is in past tense. Like we start off saying
アニマは
Anima was the source of all things. We hear say Anima was... or all the things that make up the world, it was a manifestation of the anima. I don't know if that's just a stylistic thing or if this is like going to be a framing narrative, like we're being told this story that happened in the past or someone is being told this story, or if this is like some, oh, the magic in this world has vanished now. I don't know what it is, but it just strikes me as odd that they've chosen to put this narration in past tense. I would love to hear from like a Japanese speaker. Is this in past tense in the Japanese as well? I assume it is. I assume that they wouldn't have changed something like that in the translation, but I could be totally wrong. Also, I do just want to note, we are just only listening to Japanese voices through this entire trailer. What does that mean? Is this the end of the iconic British voice acting in Xenoblade, or is this just like they haven't done the or they haven't finished the localization yet? Did they just want to transmit the whole trailer throughout the whole world, and they do have the localization? There is going to be like British voice acting in the English localization. I don't know. These are all just weird thoughts that are running through my head. Can you tell that I'm obsessed with this franchise? Anyway, let's
アニ
keep
マが
going.
形を変えたものだ
Here we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We see 5 suns. Now, later in the trailer, they will say that this land has 6 suns. In that shot, and I will hopefully remember to remark on it when we get back to that shot. In that shot, so obviously this shot is during the nighttime. In the shot where it says there are 6 suns, we do see 6 suns. One of them is much larger and much yellower than these ones. These ones are like small and white. And then there's a large yellow one that these like maybe all orbit around. So this is obviously during nighttime. What I'm thinking is that large sun is like an actual sun, like a star, how we think of it, and these 5 things are something else. And hopefully when we get to that other shot, I will remember to come back, like circle back to this and speculate on what these five things might be. For now, let's keep moving. I've been recording for 10 minutes and we're 21 seconds into the trailer.
そして
When battles were raged, so obviously this is a lot more like medieval than we're like typical medieval European look than we're used to seeing out of Xenoblade. This whole trailer, as I'm sure you've noticed if you've played the previous games and have watched this trailer, has a very different vibe from previous Xenoblade games. And it's interesting because honestly, had they not told me that this was Xenoblade going in when I was watching the direct, I don't know if I would have guessed that. Honestly, I think I probably wouldn't have guessed that it was Xenoblade. That being said, like all four Xenoblade games, 1, 2, 3, and X, are like feel like very different games. So I'm not necessarily surprised that we're going in a slightly different direction than in previous games here, but I do want to remark that this feels like a very different sort of Xenoblade game.
体を決するのは
When battles were raged, see this person is like not quite as armored up as these guys. Presumably this is an important character. I've just as I'm speaking connected the dots of who I think this character might be. And I'll hopefully circle back to that when we see him again. But I'm gonna bank that in my brain and
い
hopefully
つも
circle back.
アニマ
Now this is a lot less like medieval European. This is much more like traditional fantasy style of clothing here. They were decided by Anima and those who could wield its power, warriors known as Veseli. So Anima is some sort of magic power source, and people who wield that magic power are called Veseli. I don't think I'm going to remark on that too much for the rest of this trailer, but that's something I want to, like, we're getting the terminology. I want to bank that in my head in case I make a connection later on.
とそ
I'm going to let this scene play out for just a second before I say what I want to say, but I do want to say something about this scene in particular.
アニマとその力を自在に振るう騎士だった
Okay, so we saw that scene. The way this is cut implies something that I don't think is actually true. I just want to revisit this real quick because here we see this this big war scene.
体を決するのは
So two armies fighting each other. Then we cut to this woman with the magical fire sword. Angry lady with a magical fire sword, and we see her fighting this character who not that character,
体に振る
this character. This is not a great shot to show them, but this character is presumably our main protagonist of the game. I've seen a lot of people assume that this is going to be a woman, which could very well be the case, which would make it the first female central character in the Xenoblade series up to this point. Like, you had Shion and Cosmos in Saga. They were, as far as I'm aware, the main characters of Saga. I've not actually played Saga yet. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. We had Shion and Cosmos in Saga. I think you could maybe have an argument that Laura was the main protagonist of Torn of the Golden Country. I think in the past I would have argued that, but I've come more to the idea that Jin really is the main protagonist of that DLC. And then in other games, you obviously have like very prominent main characters, like major female characters, I mean. Like, you've got, obviously, Pyra and Mithra in 2. You've got Mio in 3. Like, deuterogonists, but I don't think it's fair to call, like, Pyra and Mithra or Mio the main character of their respective games. They're not, like, the POV main driving force of the games, I guess. So if this is indeed a woman, then that's cool. I think it's cool that we're getting a female protagonist in Xenoblade. However, I want to leave the option open. Xenoblade seems to be getting, in 3 particularly, seems to be getting a lot more open to other gender identities, especially in the English localization. Like, you had Juniper, the hero Juniper in 3, who used they them pronouns. You had A in Future Redeemed, who I don't remember exactly. I think people generally referred to A using she, her pronouns, but also we know that A is kind of part of Alvis, and Alvis definitely has some weird gender identity stuff going on. Not weird. Weird is a bad term to use there. I apologize for using the term weird there. I mean non-traditional. Let's use that term instead. I think that's a little bit less negative of a connotation. Alvis's, and by extension A's, gender presentation is a lot more non-traditional than we've seen out of most Xenoblade characters. There is a little bit of like outside information. Just as I was like going crazy digging through some articles before sitting down and recording this, that makes me think that this character might have a more non-traditional gender presentation than just being a woman. I don't know if that's the case. I feel like a crazy conspiracy theorist saying all of this. Once again, we're going to circle back to that later. What I wanted to say about this shot, and I feel like I've lingered on that point too long that I now want to go back and circle back to this. We have this war scene. We cut to this fight between the Fire Sword Lady and our main protagonist. We have all these reaction shots of people standing in the background. These reaction shots, so we know that from later in this trailer, we know that a lot of this game is going to revolve around some sort of school setting, or at least the early parts of this game. Because before they played this trailer, they did say we're going to be showing some of the early parts of the game, so there might be some big like mic drop that happens, I don't know, 5 hours in that completely changes how we look at the game, or it could be some twist at the end. I'm inclined to assume the latter because that's tradition in Xenoblade. It happened in 1, it happened in 2, it happened in 3. I assume it's going to happen in this one as well, but we don't know. I want to bring attention to the fact that we don't know. Anyway, the early hours of the game we know will revolve around some sort of school setting. So the fact that these people are just kind of standing in the background, like reacting to this fight between Fire Lady and the main protagonist, and like we got somebody who I want to say looks like they could be in a teacher role. I'm thinking this is not a continuation of the battle scene from earlier. Like, we have this war scene, right? We have the two armies fighting together in this war scene. Cut! I think this is a completely different scene that we're looking at. Like, I really think this is some sort of mock battle going on in the school just because of all these people just hanging out in the background. This character here, who I didn't really pick up on earlier, this seems to be one of our main party members, as we will see later in the trailer. But just because of all these people standing in the background, I assume this is some sort of mock battle in the school, and not like an actual part of that war setting that we saw earlier. So we see... I'll uphold this blade's honor, I swear it. This is the first time that we get their voice, in the trailer. As far as, like, yeah, we've just had the one narrator earlier. These shots I don't have a ton to remark on. This, actually, this stained glass. I'm gonna circle back to this stained glass in a second as well. I'm sorry I keep saying that. I do intend to. I hope that I actually hit everything that I said I'm going to circle back to. So this is Lucos. Ooh. This shot makes me think something different. We'll come back to that. So this is Lucos. I assume that Lukos is either the name of the nation or the name of this specific school. I assume this is the school building. Presumably, it's not the world or the planet itself, but we'll come back to that. Again, I'm going to say we're going to come back to that later. This stone is called an Animus Christone, or Christone. I don't know how to pronounce that. This shot is going to be really interesting. First, I want to talk about this character here. I don't think this is the same character who was giving us the sword earlier. Wow, I just jumped right to where I wanted to go. I didn't expect to do that. Because this character has some sort of like some sort of like hair thing going on here that is completely absent from this other character here. Like you don't see any sort of hair curl at all. I thought for a moment that it might be the edge of his glasses or the glasses chain, but it seemed way too far out to be the edge of the glasses, and I don't know why the glasses chain would be making that shape in that picture. Also, this guy's hair just seems lighter. That might be a lighting thing, but I think this is a different character. That stone is called an Anima Christone. This is really interesting. It not only, like, everything about what we're about to see is fascinating to me. It not only amplifies a vesselized power, but it also records its bearer's thoughts and actions. That right there says to me that we should be thinking about these Christones or Christones, or I assume it's Christones, crystalline stone. This right here tells me that we should be thinking of Christones as core crystals, right? Because core crystals, we know, exist to store, like, people's memories and people's genetic data. So, right here, immediately, I think that we should be forming a strong connection in our minds between Christones and core crystals. The second thing about this shot, and this is going to be bolstered in just a second, look at the fact that this stone is purple. I want to bring your attention to that because in a moment, that might give us some interesting implications. Because look at that. I completely didn't catch this on my first time through the trailer. I did see somebody remark on this on Reddit. This is one of the few things that I've picked up from other people's analyses of this trailer. That's the Aegis sword. Like, that's Mithra's Aegis sword right there. So, a purple core crystal that turns into an Aegis sword. Where have we heard that before? Now, I know that Malos's Aegis sword looked like the Monado. It didn't look like Pyron Mithra's Aegis sword, but, like, this to me is unless this is just some random Easter egg, and I don't know why we would be doing this, like, focusing on it this strongly, if it was just some Easter egg, like, I don't know, Lynn's Monado hair clip or something. Unless this is some Easter egg, the game wants us to make this connection between a purple crystal and an Aegis sword. A purple core crystal and an Aegis sword. There were some interviews that came out like a year ago with Takahashi where he strongly implied that we have not seen the last of Malos yet. So and like, at the end of 2, it felt like we obviously didn't see a Malos redemption arc, but it seemed like there was room for that in Malos's character when we saw the end of that game. This is, like, wild speculation here. Is this Malos? Is our sword in this game, the protagonist's sword in this game, powered by Malos? Like, that would be incredibly cool to me. I think that's really cool. I'm really excited to see where this goes. That's another thing. I'm sorry I keep saying this. We are going to come back to that. That is something I am sure I will not forget to come back to. So here's just a nice shot of protagonist looking. Here's our school setting. much remark has been said about this already. This reminds me of Garrick Mach from Fire Emblem. Every aspect of your life at Lukos, so I assume that means it's the school. Lukos is the school. Every aspect of your life at Lukos, academic and otherwise, will be intertwined with that stone. Presumably, this means that only Veseli go to Lukos. I guess we're gonna find that out. But like this, it looks like Garrick Mach. I'm sorry, this does remind me a lot of Garrick Mach. We in this same direct, we got the trailer for Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, which is obviously tied in some way to Three Houses, which is the Fire Emblem game that looks like this. So that's. I don't think this is intentional. Connection, but like when I saw all of this when I was watching the trailer and they said this was going to be a new adventure in the Xenoblade series rather than like a new Xenoblade 4 or something, there was just some small part of me that was watching this part of the trailer and being like, is this some sort of Xenoblade Fire Emblem crossover? Like, what the heck is going on here? I think that's pretty obviously not the case, but it's interesting. It's just a weird coincidence. We see that stained glass again. So that tells me that this stained glass motif is not just at the front of the school. This is a common motif associated with Lukos. Which I think we'll see again in the trailer. I hope I'm right. Here we see two of our other party members, I think. We see this guy who looks a bit like Lao from X. He reminds me of Lao from X. I have been told at one point that, like, up until X, through and including X, I don't think this is quite as much the case in 2 and 3, but through and including X, like every Xenoblade game has somebody who looks kind of like Dunban. So I think this is our guy that looks kind of like Dunban. And then this is the blue-haired girl that I remarked on earlier. She's got a bow with her. We're going to see that a little bit better in a different shot. This is the person that was standing behind the protagonist, between the protagonist and the teacher character in that mock battle scene that we saw earlier. Also, I just want to draw attention to the fact that this guy also has a sword, but I don't think swords are going to be his main deal. I'll circle back to that. This right here, that's Bionis' leg. Like, that looks like a Bionis' leg. Am I wrong? I do kind of hope that this is not going to be another 3 situation where we're mashing parts of all the worlds together. We did that in 3. I want to see a completely new world in this one. But that does remind me quite a bit of Bionis' leg. Today's exercise will simulate actual combat. So again, we have the idea of mock battles. This is obviously not the same setting, but we have the idea of mock battles brought up here. I want to just play a quick game of spot the main character here, spot the important character here, because here we've got our protagonist off on the right side here. Here we've got Lao 2. We don't know any of these characters' names, so I'm just going to call him Lao Mark 2 or Lao 2, the Lao guy. We have him here. Looking at the protagonist for just a second, my second time going through this trailer, I thought this was really weird that it looks like the protagonist is holding a halberd. I think there's actually another student, like, kind of behind the protagonist that is just being mostly cut off here, because that looks like, I don't know, it could be part of their bow, but it looks like there could be another individual there. And then there's, like, this shadow here. We can't really see if there's a shadow going here. But it looks like this person is 2 rows back from the protagonist, and it looks like there might be another shadow. I can't tell if that's part of the rock or another shadow of another person that might be standing behind the protagonist. So either the protagonist has a halberd at the start of the game and then switches to a sword later, or there's just another character standing behind them in this shot. I think it's the latter. It could be the former. This character is the one that I thought was the guy that I brought up in the war scene when I said I hope I remember to talk about him later. This is the guy I was talking about. I think this might be the same character. This is the other woman that we saw in the mock battle. It's going to be pretty obvious throughout the rest of this trailer that this woman is an antagonist of some sort. Um, so we're gonna see her showing up several more times. This character we also saw in the mock battle, and we're going to see them a few times throughout the rest of the trailer as well. This character here obviously seems to be some sort of important character. I don't know exactly how they're. I hope you guys can see my mouse cursor all right. This character here, I'm talking about the one on the left, the white-haired guy on the left. Um, Seems like he's going to be some sort of important character just because of how intricate his model is compared to all of the rest of the random students in this shot. He's going to be important. I don't remember seeing him anywhere else in this trailer. So that might come up later. I think this might be the guy who gave the protagonist the sword. I think that might be this guy. We can't see the right side of his face, or I guess from his perspective, the right side of his face in this shot, so I don't know if he's got the hair thing going on, but he's obviously a figure of authority. He has kind of the same hair color and a similar hairstyle from what we can see, so this might be the same character. Anyway, those are the characters that I think we should focus on. Protagonist, Lao, strong buff guy with a shoulder cape, orange hair person, fire sword lady, white-haired guy in the blue uniform. But I want to bring attention to something else in this shot, and what I want to bring attention to is something that we don't see. Because I don't know if I'm just missing it, but nowhere in this shot do I see this character here, the archer character, right on the left side of the screen here. I don't see her you can see her clearer in this shot. I don't see her anywhere in this lineup. So I wonder if she's, either somebody not from this academy, or she's just not a Veseli at all. I don't think it would be the latter, given what we see of her later in the trailer, but that's something to maybe keep in mind. So we're getting some sort of mounts in this game, which is kind of cool. We see some sort of enemy in the background, and another enemy in the background over there. I don't recognize any of the enemies in this trailer. I thought I saw some birds that might be Vogels, but other than that, I don't recognize any of the enemies in this trailer. Admittedly, there are a lot of Xenoblade enemies that haven't really made a strong impression on me, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If we've this animal, I don't recognize, but if we've seen them in other Xenoblade games, feel free to let me know. For example, I barely remember any of the enemies from X. So if, these guys show up in X, I don't remember them very well. But I don't recognize them. So here we have the protagonist jumping in to protect blue-haired bow girl, who has some sort of icon on her. I've not noticed this before. The icon on her lapel. It is not exactly the Agnes icon from 3, but it reminds me of the Agnes icon in 3. So I wonder if that's a tie-in there. Protagonist thinks they're finally getting a handle of their powers. So presumably this is not too long after the protagonist got their sword. Here's another scene of that same mock battle, and this is part of why I think it's a mock battle, is because, this is pretty obviously the same setting that we saw earlier. This is the white... I did not notice this earlier either. This is the white-haired guy that I pointed out in the lineup earlier. I wonder if he's going to be sort of a rival to Lao in this game, because they're fighting here. Killing is part of a Veselized job, I think we can assume this line is coming from this character here. There's the guy that I remarked on earlier. Seeing his hair a bit better in this shot, I do think there's a strong possibility that he gave the protagonist the sword in the earlier shot. So this is why I'm saying that I think this character's whole deal might not just be the sword, because here, he punches the ground. We get some lightning effects and some like purple and blue going on. And then we see like claws emerging from the ground. I can't quite tell what's coming after them, but this is definitely some sort of claws coming out of the ground. So I wonder if this might be like sort of a summoner kind of character. The only real summoner we've had in the series so far is Melia, and her summoning, like, forgive me for saying this, but her summoning system is not really that well developed, compared to a lot of, like, summoning systems in other JRPGs. So I wonder if we're getting a more developed summoning system with this character here. I think that would be interesting if that winds up happening in this game. We get another shot of him. He has a lapel pin that looks, yeah, this is the same lapel pin as the blue-haired girl was wearing earlier. So this might just be an emblem of Lukos. If it is, I'm wondering if Lukos has some sort of connection to Agnes and the Xenoblade 2 world in general. Which would, again, tie into the whole idea of core crystals being what gives the Veseli their magic powers. So I wonder if that is a connection that we're meant to establish, or if I'm just reading into this emblem way too much. Here's the blue-haired archer girl. This is why, like, shots like this, she's clearly doing something magical here. She wants to find the truth together. She's clearly doing something magical here, and there looks like there might be a crystal of some sort in her bow. So this is why I think that she is a Veseli, which then makes me wonder why she is not in that group shot we saw earlier. I'm really stuck on that. I don't know why that's the case. This is another shot that I wanted to circle back to. Only the dragon's purifying flame can redeem a soul that has forsaken its faith. Religion seems like it's going to be a thing in here, I assume. And I'm going to bring up more reasons why I think that later. Some sort of dragon-themed religion. Possibly, and we do see this dragon here. This looks... I might be misremembering, but this looks like a very feathery sort of dragon. It might not even be a dragon at all, but I'm assuming it is, because we've gotten a mention of a dragon right here. If this is a dragon, this looks very different from the kinds of dragons we've seen in Xenoblade previously. I'm thinking, like, the dragons in 1 were, like, very scaly looking dragons, and then you have the Telethia, which are sort of dragon-like, that also don't look anything like this. So if this is like sort of a feathery or a furry dragon, that's very different from what we've seen previously in the series. But this also could be some sort of big bird. Let me see. We see, yeah, no, this is definitely a dragon. Like, this, I don't think you can argue. Seeing that face, I don't think that you can argue that this is not supposed to be a dragon. So I'm curious. It looks different from any other Xeno dragon we've seen before. This thing is... So, what I wanted to draw attention to in this shot... we've got some sort of stained glass down here. I thought this might be the same pattern as the stained glass we see on Lukos earlier. I can't quite tell in this shot. It's a little bit too far away, and it's got that cloud kind of in front of it. But I wonder if this is... I thought at first that this might be Lukos, but we don't see anything like this in the backgrounds of the shot that take place at Lukos, so this could be a building, like, associated to Lukos in some way. This thing, I am interested by its shape, because it is sitting right in the middle of something that looks quite a lot like an impact crater. And this giant mountain, I mean, it could be naturally occurring. It could be naturally occurring. But doesn't that kind of look like the shape of a rocket ship to you? Like the nose of a rocket? Just a little bit? We're gonna come back to that. So we get the dragon. It appears that only one person is riding on the dragon at a time. I think this is the protagonist. I can't quite tell for sure. We see a shot of the dragon flying over some people, and we see this in the upper left. This I've seen people liken to Leftheria. I couldn't really see it earlier in the trailer, but I can definitely see the connections now. People are likening that to like the Leftherian Titans, which gives a little bit more credence to the idea that this might be some sort of mashed together world. Oh, it looks like there's another dragon in the background of the shot. That's interesting. But this gives a little bit more credence to the idea that this might be sort of a mashup of the worlds of 1 and 2 again. Like I said, I hope that's not all they're doing. Obviously, there's going to be more to it than that because you have the curve up thing going on here. But I don't know if they're just like reusing some design ideas or if there's going to be something deeper. I don't think Monolith is the kind of company, the kind of developer that would just reuse design ideas like that here's the Fire Lady again. I'll show you where you belong, you backwater noble. And considering she's fighting the protagonist in this shot, I think we can assume that she's saying that to the protagonist. So we're definitely seeing her in some sort of antagonistic role. I highly, highly doubt she's going to be the main villain of the game. I think she's going to be more of a rival character. Like, think of sort of like a Metal Face kind of character. Probably not as evil as Metal Face, but definitely more of a rival character than a villain, is the sense that I get from her. And then she's going to, like, I'm sure she's going to have a character arc throughout the course of the game that ends either in her joining the protagonist or joining the bad side. Like, she's not going to start aligned with either of them, but she will be aligned with one of them by the end of the game. I'm sure of that. So we got a little fight scene. This is the guy that I thought was the kind of barbarian character in the war scene earlier, and we also remarked on him in the big lineup earlier. He was standing right next to her. She's tougher than you think, doesn't need a Crystone to use her powers, which kind of defeats the idea that I said earlier that only Veseli go to Lukos. So it's possible that she can use a Crystone, but just chooses not to, or she has some sort of innate magic powers that let her go to Lukos without a Crystone, or I could just be wrong and Lukos does allow people who don't use Crystones. We'll have to play the game to find out, or look at more trailers when they eventually come out to find out. These two have some sort of connection, quite obviously. I think there is another team of 3 that we see forming in this trailer, and I think these are 2 of them. I'm kind of getting vibes off of this guy. This is complete wild speculation. This is not grounded in anything in the trailer. But I kind of get the sense that this guy is going to, like, she joins the villains and this guy joins the heroes. That's just the sense I get off of this. Completely not grounded in anything we see in the trailer. That's just gut instinct says that's what's going to happen. Or she's going to join the villains for a while and then have a sudden heel turn and join the heroes at the very end of the game. We live and die in harmony with Anima. So this is in present tense. So that narration, that past tense narration at the beginning, I think is either like a framing narrative, this story is being told to someone, or just a random stylistic choice. I don't think it's a magic is gone from this world. This is a lot of like purple and pinkish colors going on with our protagonist here, which I think lends a bit of credence to the idea that they are going to be in some way connected with Malos. Okay, I'm not crazy, right? We gotta look at that again. I'm not insane, right? This is definitely Ouroboros, right? Ouroboros. That was a horrible pronunciation. This is definitely Ouroboros, right? Like, that is 100% 2 people fused together in an Ouroboros form, right? Like, I don't know how else you could possibly interpret that. We're definitely connecting this to previous games in the franchise. I don't know how that plays into the storyline, but like, we need to be paying attention to this. Once again, with the Fire Emblem comparisons, we have Goth Lady Rhea, Goth Elf Lady Rhea. This guy, I combed through the trailer a little bit before I sat down to record this. I don't think we have seen this character before. There is some possibility he was one of the like teachers in the military lineup that we saw earlier, but I think this might be the first time that we see this character. I don't know if I'm thinking villain vibes for this guy or not. I really don't know. I'm going back to where I belong. This guy, I've not played Fire Emblem Fates. This guy looks like the villain from Fire Emblem Fates. I don't know his name. I have some friends who have played Fates. I don't know the villain's name. This guy reminds me of him. This guy's definitely a bad guy. I get the vibes. Once again, I don't think this is like main villain. I think this is like early, like really early game, somebody that we have to deal with. Like I'm thinking of like Zord or Mobius K levels of this is just an early game villain that'll maybe be our first big opponent in the story. Okay, so a little bit later, we're going to come back to you, good sir. A little bit later, the protagonist will say, "Wish me luck, brother." I think this might be the brother that we're talking about. We've got a similar hair color, just like the same eye color, similar face. They seem to be wearing similar clothing, although that just might be a Lucos uniform. I'm thinking because the sword girl called the protagonist a backwater noble, I'm thinking that like the blue might be like a nobility uniform and the black uniform is for commoners is a possible thing. I don't know if that's the case. Anyway, I think this guy's the protagonist's brother, which is what I wanted to stop and say. This video is getting very long. I don't want to keep us going too much longer. This is interesting. This appears to be a new sapient species to the Xenoblade series. We've not seen anything like this before. And something that is of note, this trailer contains exactly 0 Nopon, which is very weird. Nopon are very much a staple of the Xenoblade series. So I wonder if we're getting like a new race. I had thought previously it could be interesting to get like a Xenoblade game with maybe a Turkin or an Igna protagonist. So I wonder if we're getting a new like Turkin or Igna type species that like show up as enemies throughout the game, but then we have one of them like be a major character, or if this is some sort of like this species is going to like replace the Nopon in some way. I kind of doubt that would be the case because Nopon are, like I said, Nopon are very much a Xenoblade staple. Like even back in Xenogears, they had a mascot character who very much felt like a prototype Nopon. I forget her name off the top of my head, but there was a mascot character in Xenogears who very much felt like a prototype of the Nopon. So getting rid of the Nopon entirely would be a huge shakeup, something I'm sure would be like brought up in the plot in some way. So I don't know what to make of this guy, is my point. There's somebody with a staff attacking what could be the protagonist. I can't really get a clear view of... Yes, that is the protagonist. Okay. We can get a clear view of who that is. This person, I also don't think we've seen before. This person looks like a mook. Not really a mook, but some member of a villainous faction, I assume. I have no idea what to think about them. And I have no idea what to think about this guy, other than that he reminds me of Gort at the very end of Torn of the Golden Country, if you know what I'm talking about, and he also reminds me a little bit of Zord, what with the face, the big like metal plate on his chin. This also, he looks a little bit like he's built like Van Damme. I don't think he's going to be connected with Van Damme. He could be. but he's very much built like Van Damme. But this seems like he's going to be another early game villain. Like this is going to be one of our first big obstacles to overcome in the story of the game. We have Lau seemingly crying over the protagonist. I have no idea what to make of this shot. Unless we're going to have a Xenoblade 2 type situation where the protagonist dies at the beginning and then gets brought back to life. That's possible. I don't know that I want them to reuse that plot point, but hey, Monolith, like, Takahashi has been known to recycle plot points from his previous games. Just look at Xenogears compared to any other Xeno game, and you can find examples of that. So it's very possible that like this is a scene of our protagonist dying and then coming back to life. But something tells me that it might not be quite that dramatic. The protagonist is probably just unconscious in this scene and not actually dead. But I do want to know again. So we saw the protagonist being associated with purples and pinks. We saw the sword lady, the antagonist sword lady, rival sword lady, being associated with like reds and oranges and yellows. Then in this shot, we see the blue-haired girl being associated with greens and blues. So it seems like a lot of our major characters have some sort of association with a specific color. Their magic is associated with a specific color. This guy, we did see a little bit of green earlier when the claws came out of the ground, but here we're seeing a lot more of the purple and pink that seems to be associated with the protagonist. So I'm wondering if this, whatever's going on here, is actually something being prompted by the protagonist's magic. If Lau has some sort of connection, it seems like, based on this shot, it seems like Lau could be the protagonist's romantic interest for the game. If there's some sort of connection there that would make Lau have the same color of magic associated with him as the protagonist does, we'll have to play the game and see. Another shot of the blue-haired girl seeming to use magic. She's got a staff behind her that we didn't see earlier, I don't think. Here's the big buff guy. Here's the rival girl. Here is... This character was standing just behind the big buff guy in the lineup scene earlier. So I think they are associated with the buff guy and the rival girl. I think what we might be seeing here is sort of a Xenoblade 3 situation where we have two opposing teams that sort of come together, because we see then after this we see reaction shots from the protagonist and from Lau, all reacting to this character's dance. Now, I know this might seem a little bit hypocritical of me because I called out earlier when the cutting made it look like two shots that I don't think are actually of the same scene were of the same scene, but here I think it's a little bit different because we see the blue girl, then we cut to all the reaction shots, and then we cut back to the blue girl. So the fact that we had those interspersed between two moments of the same thing suggests to me that this is all part of the same scene. These people don't look angry. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe she looks a little bit angry, but like from the buff guy, this looks more like an expression of surprised admiration is how I would describe this. And this person as well, like, does not look angry at all. I would expect if they were the rivals to our protagonists and they were all just hanging out together, we would see some sort of anger. And then this might be just the protagonist good boy or good girl juice flowing through our protagonist's veins. But this is not an angry expression at all. This seems like they are happy to be chilling with the rivals. And we kind of also see that out of Lau as well. So I wonder if this is a scene of these people have all been rivals with each other during their school days, but something has happened that is bringing the two sets of three people together. Which, if that's the case, we could wind up with another six-person party. And these people who I've been thinking of as like rival characters throughout the course of the trailer could wind up being the second half of our main party. I don't know if that's going to happen. Obviously, I haven't played the game yet. I'm going to, obviously, but I haven't yet. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that's where my brain is going. Here's another scene at night. We see the five suns without the big yellow one, and then this beam of light. First of all, I want to draw attention to the fact that this looks an awful lot like Offseeing. So I wonder if the blue-haired girl is going to be some Offseer kind of character. It reminds me of Offseeing, and it also reminds me of, if you've ever played Final Fantasy X, the dance that Yuna does to send souls off. Like, combining those two together, this kind of seems like some sort of ritual of commemorating the dead that this girl is performing here. And the green beam of light goes up towards where the big yellow sun would be. I don't know if that's important. I just that's a bit of symbolism that caught my eye. We then immediately cut to this scene of this sprout of some sort, these unbloomed flowers or unripened fruits, whatever they are. Given the size of the plant, it's probably unbloomed flowers. But like the juxtaposition of this ritual to this like traditional symbol of new life makes me think that was a ritual of sending off the dead or commemorating the dead, maybe like sending their souls back into a cycle of rebirth like we saw in 3, like we saw in Final Fantasy X, that sort of thing. I do have an idea of who this might be commemorating, and I'll come back to that pretty shortly. We see this plant. Well, brother, wish me luck. This is what I wanted to actually immediately come back to. The fact that we don't see the brother in this scene. If I were making a trailer like this, there is only 2 reasons that I would not show the brother in this scene, because we very obviously want to draw attention to the fact that the protagonist has a brother. That, like, I don't know why you would include this line of dialogue in the story unless it was some way very important that the protagonist has a brother. And that being the case, there are only 2 reasons why I would not show the brother in this scene if I was making this trailer. 1, if the brother is a character that we have seen before that we don't want the viewer to know is the brother yet at this time. Or 2, if the brother is not actually present here. And I'm actually leaning towards the latter because just something about the delivery, like this facial expression, and something about the way this scene is shot, and the delivery of this line makes me think that the protagonist's brother is dead. I don't know if that is the case. That's probably, like, That's just what my gut instinct is telling me. And so when I said earlier that I think I know who this ritual might be for, I have a feeling if this is a ritual commemorating the dead, I think this might be for the protagonist's brother. So that's where my mind goes in this scene. So here we get some more narration, and here's another thing, because I'm pretty sure this is the same narrator that we heard from earlier. We see the 5 suns with the bigger, yellower sun in the middle. I think this is more of our actual sun, and these 5 other things are something else. The way they move around the main sun makes me think there may be some sort of planets or they almost remind me of elemental orbs from the second game. So I'm thinking they're either like other planets or some sort of elemental spirit thing. This is land warmed by the light of 6 suns. So we see the six sons. This narrator, I think, is the same narrator from the beginning of the trailer, but now he's speaking in present tense, which is an interesting change. I don't know if I should be paying attention to that, but I am. Here we're riding on our mounts again. It seems to just be the protagonist and Lao. The blue girl isn't here yet, which makes me think that, yeah, it's a definite possibility that she joins the team later. Alternatively, definite possibility that these two are love interests in this game. And we get a nice pan up of the world. Okay. So, this is a very loaded line of dialogue. I'm going to come back to it in just a second, but before I do, I just want to bring some attention to the fact here, this spot up here, let's let the whole title show up. This thing here reminds me of Galahad Fortress. And this lava over here reminds me a bit of like a circuit board. I don't know if that's going to be important. I feel like a crazy conspiracy theorist for that one. But that's what that looks like to me. Now let's revisit this extremely loaded line of narration. This is a land warmed by the light of six suns. Did I... And it is here where mankind would learn that the vengeance of a fallen god had yet to be fulfilled. So, extremely loaded line. The vengeance of a fallen god. I don't want to assume this is Klaus. I have seen a lot of people assuming this is Klaus. I feel like we had been told pretty definitively that the Klaus saga is over. So I want to assume that Klaus himself is not going to be a major character in the series moving forward. So I want to look for other candidates of who this fallen god could be. Candidate number one that I don't really want to talk too much about is Void. Void was the new antagonist introduced in, like, I think they were called Void. The new antagonist introduced in Chapter 13 of Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. Void, it definitely seems like there are plans for Void going forward. Void was imprisoned by the Samarians, that's what they were called. Void was imprisoned by the Samarians, I believe. So this vengeful god could be like a Samarian associated with Void. I think Void might have been a Samarian himself. I apologize, my memory of X is not actually that firm, despite how recently I played it. I don't remember if Void winds up dying at the end of that game. I think he does, but he might not. And, like, if we are calling him a god, maybe he died and then he got better. You know, we can't really tell for sure. I have been going through this trailer assuming that Malos is coming back, and he was pretty obviously dead at the end of 2. So if Malos can come back, then Void can come back as well. Which makes me then want to move on to candidate 2, which is Malos. I wonder if this vengeance of a fallen god might be connected with Malos in some way, and we might see some sort of role reversal where actually Malos is the dead god that is getting his quote-unquote vengeance, but he's working with the protagonists, and we're going to see some sort of, like, evil force that Malos has his character arc in opposition to that evil force, and that is the force from his past, maybe, that he wants to take vengeance upon. We'll find out in the actual game. I want And then the third and final candidate that I want to talk about here for the fallen god that could be getting their vengeance in this game. This line here, and it is here where mankind would learn. The way this is phrased, and I don't know if this was intentional, but the way this is phrased says to me that humankind or mankind or whatever you want to call them are somehow not native to this planet or somehow new to this planet. And that is something that, like, remember earlier when I said Takahashi really likes to reuse ideas from Xenogears? This ties back to an earlier part of the trailer, because I would have, once again, I am a genius, I just jumped directly to it. Awesome, excellent. This is the shot I want to talk about. If you have not played Xenogears, I'm about to spoil some big stuff at the end of Xenogears. So actually, jump ahead a little bit. I don't want to edit this video a ton, so I'm probably not going to do a timestamp. Cover your ears for a few seconds if you don't want to hear Xenogears spoilers. At the end of Xenogears, it is revealed that humans are not native to the planet that the game takes place on, and instead came there thousands of years earlier on a giant ark ship. And the big bad of Xenogears, Deus, is in fact the AI that ran that giant ark ship that arrived on the planet. I wonder, I feel like we kind of got a reuse of that idea with Origin and Mobius back in Xenoblade 3, but I kind of wonder if we're going to see another retreading of that same idea here. Because like I said, this structure reminds me a lot of the tip of a rocket. Like, we even have something that looks like it could be like a rocket fin coming off the side. It's sitting in the middle of what looks like it's a giant impact crater. We have a line that implies to me that humans are not native to this planet. And we have a mention of the vengeance of a fallen god. So this could very well be a retread of that idea that we saw in Xenogears, where this AI controller of a spaceship became sort of a god to the people of this planet. And that is going to be the big bad, or at least a big bad, of this game. I don't know if that's the case. That's the idea that I'm going to be running with in discussion of this game. I'm very excited to see how that pans out, if that winds up being what we see in this game. That is pretty much the end of the trailer here. We get Xenoblade. There's a couple interesting things to remark on here. Xenoblade Genesis is the title of this game. Xenoblade Genesis is the title of this game. It's coming out next year. I'm so freaking excited. Something that I saw some people comment online that I wanted to comment on too is that the effects on the lettering in this game appear to be some sort of crystals that presumably specifically purple and pink crystals that presumably ties back to the crystone that the protagonist uses, the purple crystone that may very well be Malos. But there's two big things that I want to note about this game. We've dropped the Chronicles. This is not Xenoblade Chronicles Genesis. This is just Xenoblade Genesis. So I wonder if, in hindsight, we're now using the Chronicles title as an indicator that something belongs to the Klaus trilogy. I want to head off some things right now. I am aware that in Japan it's always been just called Xenoblade. Chronicles was just a subtitle added for the English localization. Xenoblade is always what the series has been called in Japan, but I wonder if now the localization is going to be using Xenoblade or Xenoblade Chronicles, the word Chronicles, as a signifier that it belongs to the Klaus trilogy. which is going to leave X as sort of a weird orphan child. I don't know how that's going to tie in. But that's what I think might be happening here is now that we're done with the Klaus saga, we're going to move beyond the Xenoblade Chronicles branding, and maybe Genesis is going to be a subtitle for like a whole new sub-series. Like maybe we'll get 5 years down the line, we'll get Xenoblade Genesis 2, Xenoblade Genesis 3 in 10 years or something like that. Or we could just, every Xenoblade game from now on is just going to have a subtitle instead of being numbered. I think that's a reasonable direction to take the series. Um, if I don't know how drastically this is going to be disconnected from the Klaus saga, you can tell by my speculations that I don't think it will be that drastically disconnected from the Klaus saga. But if it is more drastically disconnected than I thought it would be, then yeah, it could be just every Xenoblade game from now on is going to be a Final Fantasy sequel, Final Fantasy style sequel, I mean, and it's going to have a subtitle instead of a number. That's not what I want out of this series, but it's a direction I would be totally fine with. I think that's a perfectly acceptable direction to take the series in, even if I prefer that the sort of lore undertone that has been running throughout the course of the game so far. I think from what I've seen of Takahashi's work that that's what he prefers as well. So I don't think this is going to be like an entirely disconnected from the previous sub-series, but we're going to find out. Obviously, we'll find out when we play the actual game. The second thing I want to draw attention to is Genesis. Xenoblade Genesis being the title. Takahashi is no stranger to biblical allusions throughout his work. You see it a ton in Xenogears. Less so in Xenoblade so far. But I wonder if this is like... I feel like this isn't a prequel. Because from everything that we've saw of Klaus's world, it seemed to very much be a... it seemed to very much be like our world up until like the 2010s. So I don't want to assume that this is a prequel, despite the title being Genesis, because that what we've seen doesn't fit in with what we've seen of Klaus's world. What we've seen in this trailer doesn't fit what we've seen of Klaus's world. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. But it looks like we're bringing biblical allusions back into Xenoblade. Put Xenoblade, put the Bible back in Xenoblade, etc., etc. Also, there were some Bible allusions in Xenosaga because, like, I think Cosmos is supposed to be a reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. That's wild. I don't know what that's about. Full disclosure, I haven't actually played Xenosaga yet. I'd intended to play Xenosaga before Xenoblade 4 came out. I don't know if that's actually going to happen now because I also intended to play Final Fantasy VII before the third part of the remake trilogy comes out. So that's high on my docket, or that's high on my list now, is to get through Final Fantasy VII before FF7 Revelation, I think was what it was called, before that comes out. So I don't know if I'm going to make it through Xenosaga before Xenoblade 4 comes out. I'm going to at least give episode 1 the old college try. But that's what I want to talk about with the trailer itself for the most part. I want to bring in some outside connections now. Let me see if I can find a good line where we're talking about anima. Anima was the source of all things. When we talk about anima, that, like, tickled my brain fibers a little bit, because I have not played Xenosaga yet, but I have played Xenogears. And in Xenogears, there were these little things called the anima relics. The anima relics were special things that, they're a series of 12 yellow rectangular parts, each with one eye, that resemble the Zohar. So the anima relics are a kind of MacGuffin hunt you do towards the end of Xenogears. because when you combine an anima relic with a gear, the gear turns into an omni gear, and that is a very significant thing that happens towards the end of the game. Also, I'm just making note of this. This is the second Legend of Genesis. Humans banished from paradise were foolish enough to revolt against God. This is talking about the humans like fighting the AI on their ship as they were coming to the world. So the fact that this is called a Legend of Genesis, and we're looking at Xenoblade Genesis, I think that lends a little bit more evidence to my theory that the giant mountain we see is Big Spaceship, and the vengeful god, or the fallen god that will have its vengeance, is Big Spaceship. But anyway, there are anima relics in Xenogears. There are anima relics in Xenosaga. Let's see, mysterious artifacts shaped like enormous human spines. The logo of Xenosaga Episode 2 is in fact an anima relic. I have not read through this whole article because I don't want to spoil myself too much on what happens in Xenogears, but we see the Zohar and the Vessels of Anima were once whole. For those who are not aware, the Zohar is basically what Xenogears and Xenosaga call the conduit. So the conduit in the Xenoblade universe, or the Xenoblade multiverse rather, and the Zohar in, at least in Xenosaga and to a lesser extent in Xenogears as well, are what the same device is called in the in those universes. So Vessels of Anima is revealed in episode 3 that Yeshua is actually the anima. So let's talk about what that means. Can I get to the page I want to get to? I looked at core crystals a little bit because I wanted to say that, like, hey, core crystals are a thing. I think the crystons are core crystals. That's what I think they are. That's what I think we're looking at. Apparently I can't get to where I wanted to, so we are instead going to go here. Look at the anima. The power of anima is what forms the pair to the power of animus. Now, if we follow this link, this is anima. I have it open here, but I can't get to it because my screen recording thing is in the way, and apparently I can't move my screen recording thing. So we're just going to follow the link again. If we follow this link to the Wikipedia article, we get to anima and animus. So anima... So, disclosure, they could be using anima as like shorthand for animation. It's the thing that animates the world. But the fact that we've used anima in this more specific context, in both Xenogears and Xenosaga, tells me that, that's not how we're supposed, or just a generic idea is not how we're supposed to think of this. We're supposed to think of this as anima and animus. So that makes me think there might be some sort of like anti-magic, maybe, that we see that opposes animus, or anima, and it'll be called animus. Anima and animus are twin concepts developed by Jung. Carl Jung is also a big source of inspiration in earlier Xeno stuff, Xenogears and Xenosaga. And what I want to draw attention to here, I especially want to draw attention to a couple things in this paragraph here. So, anima and animus are described in analytical psychology as archetypical psychology under the umbrella of... There's a lot of words here. I don't know that much about psychology. I can't explain to you exactly what this means. They're considered the animistic parts within the self, which Jung viewed as parts of the self of the infinite set of archetypes within the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious seems to be like a thing in Xenoblade as of X chapter 13. When we saw Owl traveling through the space between universes, that seemed to be like a sort of collective unconscious kind of thing. And Origin also seemed to be sort of a collective unconscious analog within 3. So we know Jung's ideas are being borrowed by Xenoblade specifically. So what we can look at here, the goal is to become integrated into a well-functioning whole, similar to positive psychology's understanding of well-tuned personality through something like a Goldilocks principle. Okay, so I actually skipped over something that I wanted to say. Jung described the animus as the unconscious masculine side of a woman, and the anima as the unconscious feminine side of a man. So those specific definitions are what make me think that our protagonist might have like some slightly non-traditional gender presentation going on. The fact that the unconscious feminine side within a man is apparently a driving force of the world that this protagonist lives in. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading way too into that, but what I especially want to draw attention to is the goal is to become integrated over time into a well-functioning whole. For men, this involves accepting eros or desire for connection. For women, this means developing logos or reason and rationality. Now, putting aside the obvious misogyny of connecting reason and rationality to masculine stuff, yeah, that's weird. I'm not saying this is an endorsement of Jung's psychology. I don't know enough about Jungian psychology to comment on that too much. But what I see here, what I see going on right here is a woman accepting logos. That's what I see going on right in this scene right here. So, yeah, that's my 2 big theories going into this game. 1, that giant mountain that we saw, this mountain is a giant spaceship, and some sort of AI that governs this spaceship is the vengeful god that the trailer talks about. And 2, item number 2 is wherever that scene was. Item number 2 is that this thing right here is Malos. Malos is going to play a part in this game, and this is him. Those are my 2 big takeaways from this trailer. I'm excited to see how completely horribly wrong I was about those 2 things. But yeah, that's what I'm coming away with from this trailer. I'm super excited to play this game. I'm always excited to play Xenoblade. I love Xenoblade so much. It's my favorite game series. I'm really happy to be seeing a new one. Yeah, that's what I have to say. I've now managed to talk for nearly an hour and a half about a 2.5-minute trailer. So, never thought that I would quite pull that off, but here we go. Enjoy this feature length. I hope you've enjoyed this feature length breakdown of a 2.5-minute trailer. Thank you for watching. I'll see you around at some point, hopefully.